Thank you very much.
So, good morning, everyone. We'll have this discussion in English, but I think you should have a translation. So, first of all, I'm very glad to introduce to you Sir Professor Chris Pissarides. And it is a privilege for all of us to talk with him about these topics. You know, we have been introduced to this conversation by a wonderful panel in which the technological innovation in society, in business, and in the work environment has been to a certain extent discussed. And I would say that Chris Pissarides has already said that you don't need our conversation, but I do think that some ideas could come up. Chris Pissarides received the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2010. His primary work is in the economics of markets with frictions. So he's a professor of economics with a strong specialization on the labor market. And these studies have been extremely relevant for us to understand the evolution of the labor market and the evolution in terms of content, in terms of the role of skills and professionalism, and as well as on regulation of labor market. He's a Regius Professor of Economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science and Professor of European Studies at the University of Cyprus and co-chair of the Institute for the Future of Work. I think it's a study on employment and unemployment, structural change and productivity growth, as well as the role of artificial intelligence and technological innovation in the labor market are really seminal. So I would like you to give him a warm applause for this work that has been extremely relevant for all of us, university, institutions, and firms, to understand the evolution of our society. So thank you. Chris, I had the chance to listen to you in many different moments, and particularly in the very recent times, you have been talking a lot about artificial intelligence and the future of work. I have to say that most of let's say, the communication, the discussion around artificial intelligence tend to underline too much, in my view, the risk, the challenge, the risk that we are facing in terms of losing workforce, losing the capacity to control. So the word risk, even if you look at the regulation in the European Union, the AI Act is particularly focused on the different risk profile around artificial intelligence, a risk about privacy and protection of data, about protection of individual rights, all this kind of stuff. But I've been listening to you about the opportunities, let's say, the bright side of artificial intelligence, not the dark one. So my first question is the AI already affecting the jobs and the extent to which we can talk about an opportunity more than, let's say, a negative downside?
Thank you very much. Well, let me first thank you for that introduction and thank the audience for their very warm welcome. I always love coming here. Every time I come, the location is even better than the one before, so I wonder if there is any limit to how much beauty you can show, architectural and otherwise, in Italy. I found the conversation that the panel had just had very illuminating. It's good to see people expressing such good understanding of what AI is about, at least the way we understand it. And in fact, your question was sort of partially dealt in the previous discussion as well, with which I agree, especially Mr. Mangi was especially vocal about it, which is that AI is not a threat. We should not look at it as a threat in the labor market and with jobs. We should look at it as a challenge that can improve the situation a lot, both productivity and the well-being of workers, the quality of work, so people can go home after a day at work and feel happy about it rather than disillusioned and disappointed like many do today. But what we need to be very careful about is skills. The challenge is how can we provide the skills for the workforce so that they can take advantage of the opportunities that AI can offer. I know you are specialists in agriculture, or at least with the companies you represent are agricultural ones. In fact, AI has some of the best applications that it could have are in agriculture, especially in connection with climate change. That wasn't mentioned very much before, in fact, but also with productivity. I mean, agriculture is a massive use of water resources, for example, and land. And those can be economized enormously if you use AI to identify areas that need the water, identify dry areas, not so dry, places where the produce is ready to be picked up, helping in the packaging, in combination with robots, move it to warehouses quickly. Because what we have to remember, apart from AI, especially generative AI, understanding things and making decisions and making suggestions, is that possibly the biggest technological advance that we had since the late 20th century has been in communication costs. Someone exhibited their iPhone before. It is a communication. Communication costs today are about 1% of what they were around 1960, before we introduced email messaging and computers. So imagine what we can do by communicating across the globe, but within our country, of course, and also across the globe, anything new that is happening. When it comes to agriculture, for example, weather conditions, how the produce looks in different parts, diseases, what the public want, as again it was mentioned, you know, if public wants cauliflower and not carrots, as it said, then quickly change the seed. And by taking advantage of that, we can even improve productivity, but we can improve the quality of the product more than anything. And until we economists are able to measure quality in our national statistics, it may not show up, but it will be there. Consumers will know it, and waste will be reduced, and ultimately, hopefully, address poverty as well through lack of nutrition.
That's a good point. I mean, you are saying that we have to look at AI as our best ally in order to face the societal challenges like climate change, like the lack of land and water and other type of primary resources to feed an entire planet that is gonna be 11 billion people quite soon. So, you know, using this type of technology will emphasize the capacity of the humankind to face those challenges. And in that sense, we can talk about, someone has been talking about, I think the CEO of Oracle, I guess, was talking about the augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. So this technology will augment the power of humankind to solve problems. Yeah. However, I've read one of your interviews in which you stated that the demand for new IT skills, in Italy we are extensively talking about the STEM, the science, technology, engineering and math skill, to be empowered and developed even further. So you said the demand for new IT skills contains its own seeds of self-distraction and stress the value of soft skills, What exactly do you want to mean with that?
Okay, well, let's go back a minute. And what I said before is that the challenge is the skills that we need to work with AI. But I absolutely agree, AI should be complementary to human intelligence. We are not going to run out of jobs. In fact, the problem we have is the opposite with our aging populations, that we're running out of labor, and how are we going to find the qualified labor? And many people actually think of the demographic problems that we're facing in Europe as longevity. People will live longer. In fact, it's not. It's the fact that we're not having many babies. And if you don't have many children, then 20 years from now, you're going to face bigger problems. 30 years from now, you face bigger problems. And that's where the skills challenge lies. Now, what skills do we need to work with AI? We obviously need some STEM skills. Without basic mathematics, engineering, the physics, how things work, you're not going to go very far. And when we looked at skills requirements in Britain, we analyzed all the online jobs advertised in Britain, which is about 93% of the universe. Many companies, more and more companies are demanding skills. Currently, about 40% expect their new recruits to understand IT skills, but it's rising very fast, very, very fast. So eventually, every company is going to want a recruit who understand basic STEM. What I was referring to about the seeds of own destruction is, don't think that your career is going to be in STEM, and that you need to understand STEM, learn, and then you'll be okay in the world of AI, because you're not going to be. Because what AI will do best is something that is much closer to STEM than to anything else. You need to know it so that you can use it, but you don't need to know it to the exclusion of other skills that are going to help you in the communication of your results, in understanding your market, in understanding your customers, understanding where you're going, understanding policy, regulation. Those things are ultimately going to be more important when it comes to the skills challenge. And in fact, the study I just mentioned at the Institute for the Future of Work, where we saw the demand for some IT skills rising, many more companies, something like 80%, want to have good communication skills, quick decision making, ability to work with others with the new technology. It's those skills that you need to develop. And of course, we're always going to have the medical sector needing more and more work. And skills there, again, you need to know IT, because we're already seeing robotics with AI being used in the medical sector. But at the same time, we need good caring services, good understanding, good collaboration between them. So it's this balance that we have to strike between technical skills and non-technical ones.
Quite fascinating. What is your advice for universities and institutions like the one you are teaching now for this purpose?
My advice to universities is to run in parallel some IT, some mathematics and IT courses. I mean, the idea, oh, I'm not for maths, I'm going to study law or something, you should be banned from the language. But at the same time, emphasize how the market works. In the sense, understanding your customer base, building good relations, understanding how to communicate with others who might specialize more in the technique, others that will specialize in the application, and so forth. Now, I mentioned 3 or 4 things at the same time, so the answer is don't specialize too soon. Especially, I mean, some of you might be familiar with the British system of A-levels. The Brits specialize from age 16 onwards. That's a terrible educational system. From age 16, you do most of them do 2 or 3 courses. And those might be English. In fact, if they do English, actually, I doubt it. It might be something like liberal studies and history and geography. Useful subjects, but not to the exclusion of everything else.
That's quite interesting. I mean, the social construction behind the technology that are running in our society becomes more relevant for successful professional life, more or less. So the capacity to investigate, understand the mechanism in the society, in the interpersonal relationship, in the way in which ideas come out, this is much more important for an individual to succeed over a long, very long professional career, because we have to remind that our life is expected to grow in terms of length, which means that being active, actively employed in a market that is changing very frequently in terms of type of jobs, it is important to be able to follow this innovation as a human more than as a tech guy.
In fact, you might think actually that this is new, but in fact it's not. If you look at the history of humanity, we've always drawn the line somewhere in education, and always something new came up that we said you have to learn new things. You know, like I was born and brought up in Cyprus, which was a British colony, completely undeveloped at the time that I was born, and then it developed very fast to become a sort of, you know, European Union country. In my father's generation, his parents took him out of school at the age of 10 because they thought, oh, you don't need any more education. They were farmers, you know, you're going to work in the farm, you know enough, that's it, go out and work. When I was going to school, it was when the economy was opening up, and they were introducing various services like accountants and so on. And he said to me, you know, unlike me, you have to learn English. You have to learn how to speak English. Without English, you are not going to have a good career. And I learned it, unfortunately, a little bit too well, and then I left, the family and went to live in England. And now we're saying you have to learn maths and engineering, and you have to do it. I'm sure the next generation is going to come up with something else. There's always, every generation always has some different kind of skill that it has to learn at school, and then develop it in whatever job they can get. It's not new. It's just that the one we have now, it's more difficult to comprehend. You know, like if you have a parent saying you have to learn foreign languages, you know what foreign language is. You know, you just have to speak the way foreigners speak. But if they say you have to learn STEM, you have to understand AI, you say, my God, what's this AI? It's the machine doing things that I don't understand. But sooner or later we will understand.
You need to have AI literacy, digital literacy, but the reality is that the history is always the same. So, like when Gutenberg invented the printing machine or the internet, I mean, technology will enable new things instead of, let's say, reducing or making more homogeneous, more standard things. I mean, AI will amplify the capacity to manage diversity, variety, and stuff like that. Think about the agriculture and farming sector. We may have the risk of having very small cohort of products, or this technology will enable farmers to manage a larger or deeper range of products and variety. What is your idea?
It will manage more variety, and we know that if it comes to satisfying your customer, satisfying your worker, variety of products is important. A lot of economic growth theory is based on expanding the variety of goods. But to expand the variety of goods, you need to know, especially in agriculture, you need to know where to cultivate each product, where the climate is going to be better, the soil is going to be better, the watering and all that. And AI can really help you there. Especially actually in countries like Italy, because there is already a kind of base to build on, because I don't know we managed it justifiably, of course, that the Mediterranean diet is the best and you should learn it and you should do more. Well, who better to champion the Mediterranean diet in more value-added products, more niche products that you have than countries like Italy, Spain, and Greece. And the Greeks are about to learn from the Italians little by little. You know, they're having their niche specialized products now getting the DOC label. Italy is more advanced in that, and that's the way to go. It's the way for, should I say our countries, since I'm Greek, Italy, Greece, is not to produce massive quantities of the same product to enjoy the economies of scale, because there isn't much profit there, there isn't much value added. It is to choose the specialized things that will go to specialized tables, specialized destinations where they're going to pay a lot. And there are, and consumers, I was reading recently about the food industry, about the final product. In response to that, there's a very big, you must know about it, there's a very big conference on food that takes place in Shanghai every year. It's called SAL, I think, SAL. And they invited me to talk about food if I wanted. So I thought that's a good chance to learn about the food industry. Consumers are becoming much more aware of what they're eating. Not only what goes in the product, but the way the product is produced. And that's partly in response to climate change. After all, if you think, what are the two biggest challenges that we're facing as economies, our economies are facing nowadays? It's the digital transition that we've been talking about, and it's the climate transition. Agriculture combines them both. And on the one hand, it's the final food product that you have to conform to what consumers want, obviously. And variety of product is important, and healthy products are important. And then the other one is how to produce without the wastage that is still taking place, water resources and throwing away food because it wasn't picked up in time and all that. And then how to learn how to use the digital technologies with AI to coordinate all these. It's a good challenge, but you'd be astonished how informed consumers are of what goes in food and how it's produced.
Very interesting. Let's try to have now a view, a larger view. I mean, previous panel have been talking about the European and Italian economy compared vis-a-vis with the Chinese and US economy. And of course, we can underline the difference in productivity in many areas, the adoption of technology. But honestly, the question is, how is the future of a European economy in this global confrontation between US and China? And what is the future of Italian economy inside the European, or together the European economy? I mean, you are Greek by birth, you are working in the UK, which is out of Europe, but is Europe. So what is your view?
I will not give you my view about the British. They're out of Europe, but I think most of them wish they were in Europe now. But you can just go in and out, in and out, because they're realizing the cost of having to trade from outside, and the long queues, anything you want to do at airports. But anyway, I mean, the future, we really need to sit down as Europeans and see what to do and in what sequence and how urgently. So it's very good that someone like Mario Draghi, who is one of the great Italians, I think, ever since his job at the ECB and whatever it takes, just one sentence saves the euro. hopefully one sentence will save our economy in Europe as well. I think we need to do, actually, it's absolutely essential that we work closer together in Europe. One thing that, I mean, obviously, the Draghi report emphasized that. One thing he didn't emphasize very much, actually, is how deep the divisions are within Europe, and they're still on national frontiers. If you look at labor productivity across Europe, take all the European Union countries, then there are no overlaps in productivity between North Europe, Northwestern Europe, Southern Europe, and Italy belongs to the South, I'm afraid, here, and the new members of Central and Eastern Europe. All the countries of the North, from France, Germany, going up Netherlands, Denmark, and so on, all the smaller countries, have the highest productivity. They're investing more than anyone else, so it's going to go up even more. They have the best innovation environment, according to the World Economic Forum, the best competitiveness in the whole of Europe. Then comes the South. The leading country in the South in terms of productivity and competitiveness is Italy, although you may not find it very convincing, but think what's the alternative, though? It's Greece, it's the islands, it's Malta, Cyprus, it's Portugal, Spain, and that's it, really, in the South, about 5 or 6 countries. But they are behind, and they're in a group together. And then we start with Slovenia as the most advanced of the Central Eastern European ones, and then all the other Central Europe down, until you go down to Romania, Bulgaria, which have productivity which is a tiny fraction of the rest of Europe. Now, one way of giving a push to the European economy as a whole is to integrate these countries more. And we're not integrating them more. German investment is mainly in Germany, Dutch investment is mainly in the Netherlands, and so on. And the technological advances when it comes to climate, the sustainable sources are mainly in their countries. You know, I mean, the North, we know the North doesn't have sunshine, for example, and they have more photovoltaics than the South. I mean, it's ridiculous. They should come in and install them in the South and put cables to transfer the electricity to the North. That's how you integrate an economy. In the United States, they wouldn't even think twice about that. I read a very interesting book, actually, about electrification in the US, how to electrify the whole of the US economy and how to provide all the electricity with sustainable sources, mainly sunshine. And it was written by engineers, so he did all the engineering calculations. And I didn't understand everything, but at least I got the essence, being an economist. And I mean, he wouldn't say things like, oh, Texans were going to invest in Texas, and I don't know, New Englanders are going to invest in New England. He said, you know, spread it throughout. You know, the South will be exporting electricity to the North. The North is more windy, we're exporting to the South. Why don't we do the same here? If we do it, we're going to manage to integrate it. And if you think of Europe as an integrated economy, it's about the same size as China, if not a little bit bigger now that China's been going down. We're talking about China being very, very advanced in artificial intelligence and the things they can do, which is true. But you shouldn't miss the fact that productivity in China is about a quarter of what it is in Europe. I mean, we are richer, more advanced in everything. and China has a long, long way to go until it catches up with Europe. The reason they're more successful there is that there is a very strong influential support from the central government. And it's the central government of all the 1.2 billion people. And about 15 years ago, they decided they would develop high tech to compete with the United States, mainly. That's when relations between US and China started deteriorating. And they've been successful because there is very little regulation. the government tells them, go on, but be careful. Every now and then they get huge fines. They give money to the government out of the huge profits they make, and they carry on.
Yeah. So
we regulate too much here.
Yeah, that's
said.
There's a motto. US innovate, China replicates, Europe regulates, even though they do not replicate anymore, but that's an issue of regulation, over-regulation here. And I just, do you want to say something about that, about regulation in Europe and the environment for innovation in Europe?
Well, I must say, many of the things that are regulated in Europe, I like. I used to like them a lot, like the GDPR, privacy, and all that. Then, talking mainly to the Americans, because there are a lot of Americans that I come across in my travels at meetings, American economists. They keep saying, you're going to fall behind, you need to not to regulate so much, this is not the way you push the new technologies. And these are mainly Europeans who moved to America, actually, and were working in American universities. And I have to say, I started sympathizing with that now that I see what's going on. I know from anecdotal evidence that although there are a lot of successful startups in Britain, mainly in London, there are kind of technology hubs here and there, Canary Wharf being the first one. Once they become successful, they reach kind of unicorn stage, they move to the States because they say they want to make use of the agglomeration, positive agglomeration externalities you get in places like Silicon Valley or in Massachusetts, and so on. And I was quite astonished to hear from Draghi in the interview that he gave to the president of the Commission that something like 30% of unicorns in Europe left and moved to California instead of developing here because of the regulation we have. So there's something wrong, obviously. Now, I'm not a regulation expert, so I don't want to say, stop this and that regulation. But what I can see as an economist interested in these things and seeing how the market works is that the system just isn't working. And if it's broke, you need to fix it. Now, how you deregulate, you need to talk to lawyers, economists, technicians, what the implications will be. But it cannot be that China and the US that don't have as much regulation, they're all going to vanish in some way or another, and us Europeans will stay above them because we're regulating. There is something wrong. And in places like Italy, you have your own regulation on top. It's not just the European regulation, which makes it even worse. Actually, in Greece, it makes it even worse than Italy. So
I have to say that in general, my perception is that regulation is, let's say, focused on the protection of consumers. And there is no, let's say, focus on the incentive or fair environment for investment and innovation. I have seen this in many industries. Think about infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure, or think about the financial services. There's a clear protection of individual rights of consumers, which is, to a certain extent, is a positive value in general, as you mentioned, GDPR. However, we have to be careful about the living at the right environment for incentivize the right investments in order to innovate. I want to make, go ahead.
Interrupt you a minute. One bit of regulation actually that I know, because it's closer to economics than what you just said, is that we have no industrial policy in Europe. We're so obsessed against any kind of government support of industry that when we see it, we either find that government, that industry a lot, or we close it down. I think that's wrong. the Chinese got to where they are with a very, very strong industrial policy. What form does their industrial policy take? It might take it in the form of giving land for free, because the land belongs to the state, so it's easy for the state to give. You know, they gave free land to the electric vehicles 5 years ago because they wanted to develop them. They come here to sell in Europe. The Germans, who were the leaders before in vehicle manufacture, have fallen behind because they haven't invested, and they didn't get any support at all from the European Union. What's the European Union response to that? Oh, we're going to put tariffs on them. That's completely the wrong policy. Go and do the same, support your own industry, not try and stop the other one.
Very, very good point. I do agree with you. The lack of industrial policy in the last two or three decades in Europe is a huge problem.
It's been a disaster.
Yeah. Another small piece before going to the conclusion, another question or comment from you. IMF, International Monetary Fund, has just released a report talking about geopolitical blocks and let's say showing that the trade within geopolitical blocks are growing while the trade between geopolitical blocks are declining. And the geopolitical blocks are group of countries that are friends in terms of defense, energy, space. So the big trend of societies, and I would say also political friendship. So is that true? I mean, are we looking at a trend in which the regionalism or the geopolitical blocks will become more and more important? And thus, what are the implications for Europe?
Unfortunately, that's very true. I don't see it reversing, in fact, given the way things are going, given the rhetoric at the election time, and we are still living through it, in fact, the biggest election year ever. And I mean, you know, it's so true. We even invented new words now. Instead of offshoring, we say friendshoring. So you offshore in friendly countries. I mean, you know, there will be beneficiaries, I suspect. So South America will benefit a lot from offshoring. America, Mexico, Brazil are already benefiting going further south. Europe, though, is going to have problems, and you know, it might benefit what I was saying before, that the CE countries that need to get more support, they might get it through offshoring from the German manufacturers, French, Italian, and so on, that you might offshore to Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, for example, instead of looking over to Asia. But I see it, unfortunately, I don't see any solution that the geopolitical risk, despite a lot of things that are saying to get together and all that, there's just nothing happening. And you're allowing everything getting worse and worse. And actually, to leave you with a more horrifying thought that is pushing in that direction, although I don't want to get into a discussion of any very, very controversial issues. This is something that I've also, it's also made the more serious press. What happened with Israel and the Hezbollah the last week is going to make it a lot worse, because it's now becoming apparent that the way that the Israelis installed the explosives in the communication systems they were using was by interrupting the supply chain. So if it's possible to interrupt supply chains of digital products and feed them, I mean, I'm talking generally, not Israel. And apparently things like that happened before as well, but to a less well-publicized extent. If it's possible to interrupt supply chains of digital products and alter them before they reach their destination without anyone knowing, then you can imagine what the security risks are. You know, you will want to buy a phone and you're going to ask what was the route between design in California, whatever, you know, if it's iPhone, and what route did it go until it reached you, and you're going to think, did it go through any not friendly country to me where it was possible to interrupt it? Then I don't want to buy it because it might explode in a situation, in a conflict situation. So I'm afraid every development that I see seems to be pushing more in the direction of friendshoring and not allowing your supply chains to pass through countries that you don't consider friendly to you.
Very interesting and to a certain extent very challenging for us. The final point is on, you already mentioned Mario Draghi's report on European Union competitiveness. There are lots of number and data there, but just to highlight some, we as Europe invest 2 or 3 times less than other countries in innovation. We don't have a unified financial market, and most of our financial resources saved by individual consumer families tend to go outside Europe in terms of investment. 75%, from 75% to 90% of the semiconductor production where European Union source their products are outside Europe. So we have a long list of numbers and data that deals with innovation. The big word is innovation. Before this conversation, the panel, Agostino Scornajenchi said, we are investing 1 billion in artificial intelligence. It's too much, it's enough, big money or small money, enough money. We don't know, but it's too many compared to the past. But what is the real truth? What do we need to do? And I want to ask you immediately, what is your position regarding a public common European debt in order to fund industrial policy?
Well, I've become so supportive of industrial policy given what I see in the other countries that I think it does need an initial push from the public. So I would be in favor of setting up that Europe-wide debt, not just individual countries, that will manage in the way that the Asia Infrastructure Bank was established in the Asia Infrastructure Fund, which has been very successful in terms of investments. It's based in Shanghai or Beijing, I think. It should work. In fact, that's another example of industrial policy in China that helped mainly China and becoming.
This is Gianicolo, 12 o'clock. No war is happening around. Every day at Gianicolo, which is this hill, we have a cannon.
Every day of the year.
At 12 o'clock.
Every day of the year.
Every single day. I mean,
wow.
since the Vatican State many years ago.
How did Italia manage to be so well organized to do it every day at the same time?
Sometimes good things happen.
Okay. Now to go back to the investment, I'm supportive of that. It's a kind of industrial policy that should take place. Now the other thing that you talked about, the investments going out, just think about it. What attracts most innovating investment in AI and other such technologies to a place? Just 2 things. A good infrastructure, or a good digital infrastructure, which we have in Europe, mostly. There are countries that don't have it yet, but we have it. And second, highly qualified human labor. It's the skills question again. And that's what we don't have, not because there are no Europeans that are trained like that, but because the Europeans who are trained like that migrate to the United States. So if the regulation environment and the funding are sufficiently relaxed to make it attractive to invest in Europe, Europeans will repatriate. There are already several expressing dissatisfaction, most famously Jess Hinton, the godfather of AI, who is British. He developed his techniques and his inventions in Britain. Then he saw that he couldn't develop the AI the way he wanted in Britain, moved to Toronto and established a hub, AI hub. He was working for Google, and he said, no, the way technology is going here is going to be dangerous, and I don't want to be involved. I'm going to withdraw back to my ivory tower and carry on with my research. People like that will come back if you provide the right conditions. But we do need this sort of leadership in human capital to develop these technologies in Europe. We shouldn't be losing them. I mean, like, just go and look at the top American university, look at Silicon Valley. They're not Americans. In fact, I suspect there will be more people of European extraction than American, actually. At least I keep meeting them, but maybe they come and talk to me more because I'm European too.
So that is very good ending for this discussion. Yesterday I was talking in another workshop with Guido Imbens, who is a Nobel Prize for economics as well, and one of the fathers of causal relationship, which causal rationality, so the capacity to investigate the cause-effects relationship in our research, in social science particularly, and we come up with one conclusion. I mean, we can put all the success factors, all the ingredients in a recipe or in a country or in an ecosystem like venture capitalists, human capital, right regulations. But remember that at the end, humans make the difference. So you may have the right environment, but the successful projects come up only when the humans are playing together in the right way. And the humankind is still much better than artificial intelligence. That's the final conclusion, and I want to ask you a big applause and warm applause to Professor Pissarides. Thank you for your insights. And I really think that after this discussion, I feel myself more optimistic about humans, less optimistic about Europe. Have a good continuation.